sense given that Xerxe has had a bit of a limited pool so far this split. But right now we're yet to see any jungle bans come out. The Swain being banned away definitely suggests the ROCCAT looking for an early either Caitlyn or maybe Skarner priority.
Yeah, we've only seen a jungle ban on the side of Splyce. That was Kasing off the board, followed by the Azir. So they take a shot at Blanc's most played champion, and the Tahm Kench is off as well. Going forward, ROCCAT, they mix things up a little bit here. Do we see any of those jungle bans come through for that final?
Ooh, well, that's the real question. Rise actually being banned away, so 2 of Blanc's most played mid laners will be taken off the board. Next, he will typically move towards the Corki, but on 8.5, he kind of has fallen off in priority. And we did get to see a bit of his Anivia last week against H2K, where he did have that unfortunate wall. Still, though, overall, felt like he had a very solid performance, so we'll see what Blanc moves on to throughout the rest of the series. But no Xayah bans, no Skarner bans, no Olaf, no Caitlyn. There is a lot available to play with for both these teams. Yeah, for both these junglers especially now. I wonder if they decide to first pick it up or if instead it's more of a bot lane focus. ROCCAT decide to lock the Xayah early for Heaq. So there's a bit of a pivot here from ROCCAT. Typically from Heaq and Norskeren, you would see a priority on things like the Caitlyn and the Braum, but naturally with the Braum being banned away, they're going to go towards the Xayah, likely Rakan combo. Now, Splyce, given that there are a lot of top laners available, Sion could be an early priority for them. Skarner would also be another good early pick to secure herself a strong top side of the map, which is something that we've seen Splyce do a lot over the last few weeks. Yeah, it would be right in their playbook. No reason to change it up in game number 1. However, Splyce decide to use their first pick to take the Caitlyn to match on AD carries. Something Kobbe's been very proficient at this split. Do they follow it up with that jungle pick? There are so many options here, and only 10 seconds remaining to see what Xerxe takes. Well, one of his big comfort picks has been Xayah throughout the split, but locking it in this early could be a bit of a gamble given the sheer amount of junglers that are up and available. Looks like that Sion will be the priority. Now remember, you can flex it to both top and mid. Splyce do have that option in Nisqy. He has shown a lot more of an impact when he's allowed to play those roaming mid laners. Things like the Galio really fit his playstyle and really fit in what Splyce like to do, which is largely pair around the top side or enable their bottom lane duo. Right, and it does seem like it would be a bit of a throwback if they decide to put Odoamne on the Sion. It is definitely in the dog champ tier list, as we heard on the Euphoria podcast this week. Rakan's been locked in, though, so ROCCAT managed to pair the Lovers bot lane, and we'll see what they spend their final pick on. Skarner, it's been on our minds, on our lips, this entire pick and ban phase. This is where Memento grabs it, and it is. Feel like that for ROCCAT, Skarner is one of the best junglers for Memento. Good early game impact, strong potential to snowball, has the ability to gank a lot, and can also have a lot of mid-game power. The also added value of forcing your opposition into getting that QSS makes a lot of sense, but it ties in with the Tahm Kench ban that we have seen. Splyce going to answer with the Morgana. I feel like this is something that we've been seeing Kasing practice a lot in terms of his solo queue. Right. He's been bringing out in preparation, and they're going to bring it out today. Yeah, well, we've seen some really impressive Morgana games in the European LCS especially. It is right up Kasing's alley with a lot of those range type of supports. Very true. Very good deterrent from things like the Skarner. But now we're in ban phase 2. It's more mid-target bans at Blanc. The Anivia, already gone. Yeah, you're really narrowing that pool right now for Blanc. What else will he be able to bring out? So far this split, his only other champion is the Corki and the Galio. And you would imagine that given that Galio so far has a 100% presence in Europe on 8.5, that it will likely be banned away. And if it's not, ROCCAT could very well look to pick it up for themselves. Yeah, Splyce also still have yet to grab their jungler, so ROCCAT, they're removing the Olaf. It's not something we saw Splyce play just yet, but it has been making a pretty big impact around the world. I guess ROCCAT are assuming that it is within the wheelhouse of Xerxe, even though he hasn't yet played it on the LCS stage. I imagine a Xayah ban to follow up, given that it is just simply a big comfort pick for Xerxe, forcing Splyce onto something like a Sejuani to then round out the vast majority of their composition. Instead, they are compensating for the potential of Sion to flex from top to mid, and they don't want to give Odo that Vlad, which he's had a lot of success with him recently. Yeah, 3 games on that, actually, leading up to the end of the regular split. And Odo kind of let off the leash, no longer on those dog champs. Maybe he'll pick up something else to carry with.
The Galio is also banned away, though, as you pointed out. It leaves the Zac open, so this would be a pretty easy lock-in for Xerxe.
Ooh, I feel like this is a bit of a risk. Xerxe has shown so much expertise on this champion. It really is one of its comforts. He was playing this last year before it was even meta, and it just fits into his wheelhouse. It enables a lot of strong early ganking power. It's fantastic in terms of team fighting, and it can be used as a stall tool in the mid game if Splyce fall behind in the early. But what I'm expecting already is a lot of investment towards the top side of the map.
Yeah, now there's a Taliyah locked in, so this gives ROCCAT a chance to maybe answer some mid lane roaming with a bit more of their own. And so with Blanc already had a few champions targeted his way, he decides to take something a little different.
So right now, just the hovers of Aatrox, throwback to Freddy122, coach of ROCCAT, his famous champion from back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And it looks like that they are just going to go for a bit of a safe standard Prophet top lane champion. Gnar was something that he played a lot during the early seasons, but he actually doesn't have the best record on it, Pyra. 2-6, I believe, during the regular season, where ROCCAT failed to really execute on the 1-3-1 style, but that seems to be the playstyle that they're gunning for in this draft.
Yeah, interesting. They've had so much more success on the team fighting compositions, but maybe this is why they're throwing the curveball. They could have been practicing this the week leading all the way up to it. But now, the only mystery left is what Splyce are going to lock in as their final choice, and it's a Kassadin on the mid, so we will see Odoamne taking the Sion.
Okay, so a lot of interesting things to note about both compositions. First thing, ROCCAT, always going to be looking to play through bot lane. You've got to remember that the great thing about Xayah Rakan, a lot of engage available, and you have the ability to roam with Taliyah down towards the bottom side of the map once you hit level 6, and it can be rather difficult for Kassadin to follow, even though he's a pretty quick guy himself.
Yeah, he'd be rift walking.
So they have Prophet on a strong laner into the Sion, who's often considered absolutely fine into the Gnar, so that'll be relatively even, but you would expect in the early levels a lot of push, a lot of harassment, and they're kind of just going to leave Prophet on an island, look to play towards their bottom lane. Whereas Splyce, they've drafted themselves a little bit more scaling, but they do have strong pushing power down towards the bottom side of the map. You have a lot of range on the Caitlyn, you have a range support in the Morgana, the Black Shield can make it difficult for Heaq and Norskeren to engage in, so they may look to play through bot lane themselves, but mainly they're looking for scaling.
Alrighty, now after conquering the Misfits, stepping over Schalke, ROCCAT are in the playoffs for the first time in 3 years, but they are facing a monstrous foe here. The Splyce Serpent is known for squeezing the life out of that weaker prey, but there may be more to ROCCAT than meets the eye. Can they surprise Splyce, slip past them, and secure a spot in the semifinals? Let's find out as we load up onto Summoner's Rift for Game 1 in this best of 5.
This is going to be an exciting quarterfinal. Splyce versus ROCCAT, both fighting for a spot in Copenhagen. Our crowd is pumped. We are pumped, Pyra. There's going to be some good quality.
We are very, very excited. This is going to be an excellent one. Now, I know I'm alone in my possibly mad prediction of giving this one over to ROCCAT, but I think it's going to be a hell of a series either way, Vedius. And ROCCAT trying to play on the 1-3-1 composition. We'll see if it works for them.
Now, you've got to remember, the level 1 power of Morgana is strong. The Dark Binding, I've been told, can last longer than the Bibles since its creation. That sentence, really poorly formulated. Point is...
But it lasted about as long as a Dark Binding.
Exactly that, right? And the point is that you have a lot of threat in the level 1. So ROCCAT, they've just spread themselves pretty evenly apart. They do have eyes on the Kassadin in the middle lane. Will Splyce look to go for any sneaky level 1 shenanigans?
Oh, that's always the question. Splyce have shown themselves to have, just a wide variety of abilities and playstyles since they were known as that late game team for a while, really turned things around and made it more of an early game. Well, we also talk about their experience too. I mean, these guys have been in so many playoffs and so many postseasons over the years, every single one of their lineup.
Yeah, this is a veteran roster. We talked about it at the very beginning of the split, and this is just some of their examples. Splyce's prior playoff appearances. So before this one, we haven't included this one. You can see Odoamne, 6 out of 6, Xerxe, 2 out of 2, Nisqy, he was one over in North America.
Does that count?
It does. Kobbe was in 3 out of 4, and Kasing was in 4 out of 5. So these guys, they've been in playoffs a lot, Pyra.
Yes.
And when you compare that to a team like ROCCAT, it paints quite a different story.
Yeah, ROCCAT have actually never had any of their members participating in post-split play because they just haven't had the chance. I mean, they have a couple of rookies between Blanc and Norskeren, and EQ, Prophet, Memento have just never really had that opportunity.
And Prophet, while he did qualify for playoffs with SKT, he never actually had an opportunity to play in it. And it's one of those situations where the experience gap between these two teams is rather large. And that's what makes it quite fascinating, because
the strain of a best of 5, being in that scenario, having to actually prep for it, is just so different to the regular season of the best of 1s. And you have to see how well ROCCAT will be able to adapt in this kind of environment. How well prepared have they come in? Because you know that with the talent and with the experience that Splyce do have, they're certainly going to come in prepared.
Oh yeah, and that could absolutely spell trouble for ROCCAT in this one. But if they can get ahead early, if they can build up enough of a bulwark against Splyce's aggression, and get to the late game where they're familiar, where they're comfortable, they can pull it off. Now, we are definitely watching in this mid lane for those level 6s to come in. It'll be a while, but we want to see those roaming plays.
And I love talking about this mid lane matchup as well, because Kassadin does extremely well into mages like Anivia and Taliyah that just have this hard push once he gets a couple of levels under his belt.
Because right now, he's definitely not having a great lane.
In the early laning phase, it is very rough. You're a melee champion, you have to get super close, you don't have much pushing power, and you have to sit there and eat all this harassment. He does have the teleport, so he can come back into lane, but once he hits level 6, once he's completed like the Catalyst and he starts building towards what I imagine will be the Rod of Ages, that's when he can be really aggressive and he'll actually outscale and win a lot of the trades versus champions like the Taliyah. Unfortunately, until he gets there, he's going to have to just suck.
Yeah, he's going to have a bad time for a little bit, but I want to point out somebody else on the ROCCAT lineup, because Prophet, again, we talked about his Gnar being maybe not the most successful in terms of win rate, but something that he was incredibly comfortable on. And Splyce have been very confident that he's a big weak point for this team. We heard it on the podcast as well. Odoamne was thinking that the top lane is very exploitable, and maybe if they can shut it down early, that Gnar is not going to be very useful, and only 1 or 2 items come the mid game.
And you can see that typically Gnar would have a pretty strong lane advantage. You know, has a lot of harass potential. He is a ranged top laner. He has the slow built into his Q, which means that it gets very easy to just stick onto a target and look for a lot of opportunities. But we've got to move away from the top lane for a second, because I can see Memento hanging around towards the middle lane. Could potentially look for a gank. Instead, he's going to back off. Xerxe now in the middle lane. This could be an opportunity, Pyra.
This could be coming in. Xerxe is going to get ready for the lead. Hops over. They get the silence on Taliyah. It's a 1-2 punch, but Memento is zooming in for the revenge effort. Let's see if they can get Xerxe popped down. No, he flashes away, but Memento follows, turns into blobs. Can they kill him before he pops back up? Nisqy is chasing him back, and he might have a chance to get a kill right here. The Comet comes in, but it's not enough.
So the counter gank comes in from Memento. The only reason why he was allowed to do this, well, 2 reasons actually. He was already in position to look for a gank mid, but also the wards behind the Baron pit, this early vision being invested from ROCCAT, enabled them to keep tabs on Xerxe and give Memento the counter gank. And this ties in beautifully to what we've been prepping all week, Pyra, which is ROCCAT, they're a fantastic vision-based team. They're one of these teams that just invest so much into early vision because they don't really like going for a lot of early leads. They like to keep tabs on where the enemy jungler is. They like to see what's going on. They're in fact 2nd in the league in terms of wards per minute per game on average, and they are 2nd in the league for control wards purchase per game per minute. These guys invest so much in vision early on that they basically just want to keep tabs and have a good understanding of what the enemy is trying to do.
Yeah, and this is what allows them to often get into those late game stages. They neutralize the aggression that other teams have. And I mean, it's obviously not just Memento, but he's a big part of really getting some of that vision down for the team and making sure that even a team like Splyce is going to have a hard time catching them unawares.
And this could be a good opportunity for ROCCAT, because one of the big ways in which Splyce has been dominating week 6 through 9 is through Xerxe, setting up a lot of early game ganks, largely through the top lane. But with the control that ROCCAT is so well known for, they're just keeping tabs on the enemy jungler and allowing these laners to play their style.
Yeah, and it's a good thing you mentioned what they've been doing since week 6, because it's such a transformed team. They've been so different because they've just kind of played together. There's been a few players especially who have just kind of really stepped it up.
You can certainly see that. Ooh, speaking of the duo that may step it up.
All right, Memento, he's going to get caught. Xerxe and Odoamne bashed him. Let's see if Blanc and Prophet can come in to turn the tide here, but Nisqy's even going to follow. Flashes forward to pick up first blood. Hell of another blade right there.
And we praised ROCCAT for their early vision, yet it was Memento that backs on top of a ward. Xerxe was able to move towards the top side. They set up for the collapse with all 3 members, and even though Blanc got there first, it is Nisqy that secures himself first blood. This is the early lead that Splyce were potentially looking for to enable him to scale towards the later game. Splyce, that's a great start for them.
Absolutely. So, it's been a little more quiet on the bottom side. We talked about maybe playing towards that, but ROCCAT have been sniffing a little bit further than maybe is necessary this early on in the game. It's Memento getting caught out. So Nisqy will be pretty happy with the fact that he's got that kill early on Kassadin. Somebody's going to scale hyper aggressively into the late game.
Exactly that. And considering how far behind he was put early on, securing that kill will benefit him a lot in terms of experience and gold. Now that he's hit that level 6 mark, Blanc has to show him a lot more respect, but there's the ward. You can see it just sitting right next to Memento, just before his back was cancelled. It ended up interrupting him, and then we have Nisqy use the blast cone, flash, E, and the Q combo to secure a very easy kill.
Yep, nicely played by him. Now, a big part of the Splyce success story we were talking about right before that kill happened is these two players. The Romanians have really been stepping it up. Odoamne, especially when he's unlocked on some of these more aggressive and less tanky champions.
Yeah, for
Ignore
sure.
the Sion.
Yeah, the week 6 to 9, you can just see the jungle proximity that Xerxe has exerted, and the amount of early kills that they've been able to find has been very impressive for this duo. And so far, they've been able to find some early kills, but now ROCCAT trying to answer back in the bottom side. Good chip damage down to Kobbe. You can see Blanc roaming around as well.
They know he's here, though. Who's he going to impale? Gets exhausted immediately. Weaver's Wall's coming out into teleport. Xerxe, they want to turn on Black Shield on top of him, looking for the Kobbe damage. He's going to pull Memento back into 5 members of Splyce.
And Splyce read the play beautifully. They're now going for the chase onto Blanc.
Oh, boy. Blanc's in some trouble right now. Tries to get the knock away. Nisqy chasing him down, and the rest of Splyce are coming through. Welcome to the jungle, property of Splyce.
Things falling apart in the early game for ROCCAT. They wanted to play through bot side, and while we did see a decent counter gank from Memento in the middle lane, it cost him his flash, and then he didn't look to play towards the bottom lane where they had the Xayah and the Rakan. And now that it's a little too late, Splyce very clearly read the play. They had the double TP prepared. They got there before ROCCAT could execute, and now they've secured themselves 3 very early kills.
That's that difference in experience really shining through already in this game. We're 3 kills to none, and it's not even 10 minutes on the clock. This is definitely rough for ROCCAT. They're going to have to hang on for a while if they want to fend off the Splyce boys.
So now we're not even 10 minutes into the game. Remember that Splyce have gone for a little bit more of a scaling composition with the Kassadin and the Caitlyn. And this early game, it's kind of the thing that Splyce wanted to avoid. So decent chip damage from ROCCAT. They're getting very far pushed up into the lane to allow the minion wave to hit the tower, then look for the dive. But unfortunately, the double TP comes in from ROCCAT. Xerxe reads the play well in advance, is able to move towards the bottom side. They set up the successful counter gank, and they end up with 5 people bot versus the 4. And now ROCCAT fail once again to find another opportunity.
Yeah, it's been rough. Even though they do have the roaming ability, they're just not bringing nearly as many people there. And we haven't really seen Prophet been able to get involved. And he's, of course, gone for the Mercury Treads first as well. So while he's going to be able to chase down Odoamne here, his damage is kind of lacking at the moment. And we really need to see if he's going to have these impact in team fights, despite the fact that ROCCAT are kind of building for the 1-3-1.
And the thing is, you got to remember that Splyce, they can actually match a lot of the 1-3-1 should ROCCAT even try to set it up, because Kassadin will be able to outscale the Taliyah, and he's currently sitting on 3 kills with already a completed rod of ages 10 minutes into the game.
Yeah, that's not who you want to feed early on as the Kassadin.
No, it is not. And Sion will always be fine in Gnar. You can see a bit of a deficit really starting to form, but in the grand scheme of things, he should be able to hold a Gnar in the late game. He will just go full tank, and he will be absolutely fine. So it was pretty important for ROCCAT to find this early lead, especially with the Skarner. So far, they haven't been able to do it. That doesn't mean things are completely lost just yet. They need to find more opportunities to gank bot. Both TPs are down. Xerxe's hanging around mid. Blanc will still always have push over a Kassadin. And so they just want to try and find another roam towards the bottom side of the map, see if they can find a couple kills, and if they can secure an early tower against the Caitlyn, that's definitely a window of opportunity where they can then start moving this Xayah Rakan around.
Yeah, he's got to be careful. Xerxe gunning for him right now as he flashes away but gets pulled back by the goo on the roots. See if they can make the play with the teleport coming in. Xerxe is already flashed out, and in comes Memento as well. Fast getting wiggled, and Mega Gnar. Xerxe is going to get popped down once again. This is surely going to be a kill picked up for ROCCAT. All they've got to do is polish off the pieces, and it goes the way of Blanc.
So ROCCAT finally get a kill onto the board. They counter-gank Xerxe effectively. He commits pretty hard into trying to get the kill onto Blanc. But then the TP comes in from Prophet. This is the TP advantage we were talking about. They're now moving towards the bot side. Memento still has his ulti up. Will they go for the tower, or will they look to just go for a couple of extra? Blanc is around as well. Does have his ulti too.
All right, just gonna start back, and instead looks like they just opt to take the tower. This will help them in the gold game for sure, knocking that one down quickly. So ROCCAT definitely undeterred by the fact that they had a few poor attempts early on. Fire right back, get a kill, get a tower.
So This is good for ROCCAT. This is the kill from earlier. We already saw
we wanted to show it twice.
We did want to show it twice. So this was the play that we wanted to show you guys. This was Xerxe just basically diving in. He's trying to utilize his ulti to not get CC'd, run away, but then Prophet's like, you know what, I'll trade flash for flash. I'll drag you back into my team. And then they're easily able to pick up the kill. Unfortunately for the bottom lane of Splyce, they couldn't rotate up. They were pushed under their tower by the Xayah Rakan, which meant that they could immediately then transition towards the bot side. ROCCAT, good recognition that with Xerxe out of the picture, it becomes much easier to dive. Both teleports were still on cooldown. And this is what we were saying, right? The early game isn't completely over yet for ROCCAT. Even though they fell behind a little bit, they still have the ability to force a lot of these plays. And now they're looking for a mid-tier 1.
Well, they can force the towers. They've got a lot of damage on that. And a quick charm and Poland back in. Heaq's going to knock down Xerxe. Pain Train's coming in looking for Blanc. They're going to knock right into him. And Nisqy's going to get immediate revenge. Mid laner for jungle.
So it ends up being a 1-for-1, but ROCCAT, they still have pressure. They should be able to secure this tier 1 tower. They're not letting the momentum slow down. Everything starting to pick up now for ROCCAT.
And forget about 1-3-1, and they're just sieging down. Splyce haven't been able to find an answer here. We'll take a look at how that play unfolded again with the Zac hopping in, insta-charm.
So this was something that we saw from Xerxe against Misfits, where he would basically just dive in on the Zac and utilize the fact that he has the passive, he has the rest of his team, to basically just stay alive and help wave clear. Unfortunately, he was not expecting the immediate re-engage from ROCCAT underneath the tower. They were able to find a kill. It was a good roam down from Odo that was able to at least equalize the kill, but Splyce, they still lose the tower. They're now down 2-0 in favor of ROCCAT. And now Heaq and Norskeren, they can just move up towards the top side, and ROCCAT can look to play towards that side of the map. Rift Herald is available too. Remember, they still have Skarner. The thing they have to respect is the fact that there is no teleport on their side versus the double TP that is now up for Splyce. So a dive up towards top lane could result in a 5-man party once again from Splyce.
It also always seems wherever ROCCAT want to go, Xerxe is also there. The guy is just incredibly quick on the draw, despite the fact he's just wearing the brown bags on his feet. And once again, he's going to find Norskeren hanging out near the Rift Herald, but he's got friends. So Norskeren can't go for the 1v1 right now. So does he, though. Gets the charm up, battle dance, and they knock him right in. Kasing is the one they were looking for, who gets the soul shackles onto Memento as Xerxe pulls him right back in. Heaq coming forward. Nobody wants to take this fight right now, though. Or maybe Splyce do. Decimating Smash flashed away.
Gnar is here.
Gonna jump forward. Let's see. He's got a 3-4-man knockup right now, and in comes the Gnar. Prophet trying to stack that bar, and Nisqy's going to get a kill quickly before it all happens. Odoamne getting the help of a heal from one of his teammates. Prophet stacking the Gnar bar, looking to go forward. They take down Odoamne, and that is going to be the end of it for now.
Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. We talked about the double TP risk, but fortunately ROCCAT, recognizing it, used the window that they had built up in bot side to move Prophet over to the middle lane so that he could join his team. But ROCCAT, they were a little over-eager to force the fight before Prophet was really in a position to contribute. Almost ended in disaster. Still 1-for-1 now. Splyce, they're the ones that have pressure top side. They're looking to get a bit of damage down onto the tower.
Might just be able to do it, but I think the scary thing about all these fights is that every single time Splyce gets a kill, it's Nisqy picking it up.
Just look at how this all starts. So again, look at your mini-map. You can see that Sion TP's in before Prophet is in a position to contribute to the fight. So it actually starts off in a 3 versus 4 situation in favor of Splyce, but then the moment Prophet joins, Norskeren goes for another re-engage, a good wall to cut off the escape, but then Xerxe with the ultimate drags in Norskeren to the rest of his team. They have the range advantage, and then it's only Odo who, with no longer a flash available, gets chased down by the immense slows and long-range poke from the side of ROCCAT.
You can see who's doing the work in that fight, of course. Blanc really making up the bulk of the damage for ROCCAT's side. Still, though, Norskeren, even though he went down, it was a nice setup with the grand entrance. He was able to pretty much knock up the entirety of the Splyce team. He's definitely had a harder time on some of those champions that are maybe not quite so tanky as his favorites like Braum.
Also true. On Norskeren, though, I feel like he is that kind of playmaker individual, and already we've seen him make a lot of plays this game, so I imagine that trend will only continue. Norskeren, speaking of, will now look to get a lot of deep vision down towards Splyce's top half. They will gain priority down towards bottom lane. You can see Prophet pushing that lane out now. Odoamne, he's grouped up or he's starting to move up through the river. He's going to be forced to catch this wave, and this is, again, where they can use the fact that Prophet, he has teleport over Odo, so he can actually stay down here and keep the pressure on if he wants, or he can just group up with the team and look to try and use this window to get deeper vision down towards Splyce's side of the map, because they won't be able to match the 5 versus 5, and ROCCAT can just use numbers advantage to gain pressure over Splyce.
There are so many things that were flying around up towards this top side at the moment, though, because both ROCCAT and Splyce want to try to contest out for the Rift Herald. It's ROCCAT who've got the priority on it. Got it already down to half health. Kasing, Kobbe sniffing around to see if they can maybe find a way in, but it doesn't look like it's happening. So ROCCAT, this will help them to be able to push down these turrets a little faster.
This is what we were talking about. Note here how Prophet moved up towards the top side, grouped up with this team, utilized the fact that they have 5 members, and now Splyce, they're pivoting towards bot. While that was all going on, Nisqy roamed down. They now have 2 members here, but given that ROCCAT have the Rift Herald, they should have the tempo advantage, and they should be able to keep pushing up towards top.
They're actually just going to let it go down.
They're just going to trade towers for now. They want to be in a position to potentially contest the Drake, and they're just going to force Splyce to answer up topside, which means the ROCCAT, they can just rush towards the Drake, set up before it, and then they can be the first to make the play.
Yeah. Does look like they're not keen to really give up any objectives, even for trading. If they can just contest every single one of them, they can keep it on the up and up. Still in the gold lead, of course, 3-5 in the kills, as we're not quite 20 minutes on the clock. You saw a little bit earlier, Memento, his jungle proximity this game has been really high because he's just been so active, matching Xerxe, gank for gank.
He has also been one of the contributors to the early deficit that ROCCAT were in, going back to base on a ward and looking to try and make a play towards bot side, which Splyce very eloquently countered. But remember that it is important for ROCCAT to have this early game advantage, given that they do have the Xayah Rakan, they had the roaming potential from Blanc on this Taliyah, and they also have Skarner, who eventually will get outscaled into the late game, especially when things like QSS will come through, and the reality that Zach is an excellent teamfight jungler.
And the reality that Kassadin's 5-0.
Yes.
That's not going to help.
That is an unpleasant reality for ROCCAT. He's going to very quickly reach that Lich Bane state. He's picked himself up a tier. Wow. Really going for that full scaling build. And this is where we'll start to see a little bit more of a split up around the map. This is where it could be difficult for ROCCAT, but they have a lot of roaming tools, you know, mainly with the Taliyah. They still have a TP up for Prophet. Double TP is going to be available once again for Splyce very, very quickly. Baron is coming up soon. All big points that both teams are going to want to make sure that they can control.
Some of those extended team fights is certainly going to help ROCCAT, that they've been able to secure both the Ocean Drakes in this game so far. Once again, really contesting heavily for the objectives. It's been a pretty focused game for them.
It certainly has been, and I want to take this opportunity, observers, if you could just show us the vision around the map right now, largely just for ROCCAT and how much control they actually have over the entirety of the map. You can just see full river control towards the top side.
And the jungle.
Yeah, and you just contrast that to how much Splyce can see on the map right now, because they're kind of being forced into utter darkness, given that ROCCAT have so much early pressure. You can see one control ward littered towards the top side near their red. They have one ward down by the Gromp and Splyce. They basically see nothing right now, just as the Baron spawns. So Prophet is going to keep creating pressure down towards the bot side. Now, what you typically expect is ROCCAT try and force a TP out from Splyce so they can then keep Prophet towards the bottom side and they can look to make an early Baron play. But instead, they're actually grouping towards bot. They wanted to threaten Odo. He's now back, so they're going to go back to base, reset, buy a couple control wards, and look to keep the pressure onto Splyce.
Yeah, definitely the thing that ROCCAT does incredibly well, maintaining control of this map here. Got to take a look at some of those vision scores, especially coming out of the jungle, and also in the support role. Norskeren's been doing real serious work, and you compare that to what Kasing's been putting down, it's just not quite the same.
Oh, the Baron dance now begins, Pyra. Back and forth constantly. The gold is still very even. This is a perfectly fine situation for Splyce with the scaling comp. Caitlyn yet to hit 2 items, so she's in a bit of a lull. Xayah definitely going to be stronger at this point in the game, but it's that 5-0 casting you keep alluding to.
Yeah, the Lich Bane comes up now. Xerxe looking to try and go on to Heaq, throws out the Featherstorm and gets a Blade Caller back, so Xerxe is unable to complete the gank. Splyce overextend on their hand.
A lot of respect being shown from Heaq that burns both the ulti and the heal. Doesn't want to risk getting collapsed upon. Splyce now, they're the ones regaining vision control around the river, but just keep looking at the inventories the ROCCAT have. The moment they get an opportunity, the moment they create a window to move into the river, it's very easy for them to just reclaim that vision control. And now there is a window of opportunity being created as Prophet is pushing in through the bottom lane. Expect him to group, use the numbers advantage to regain vision control, and Splyce are not going to have any wards, and that's when ROCCAT will look to force the Baron.
They're making this work right now. Splyce just can't do anything but dance to the beat of ROCCAT, controlling as much of the pit and as much of the map as they can. Splyce did come in early to try and pop down a couple of wards, but those are going to be sniffed out really easily as Norskeren and Blanc step into the bush. Or are they?
Right now they're just focusing on clearing out the waves, showing a lot of respect over to Splyce, either looking for a pick or just looking for an out-of-position member. They even choose to go back and reset once again. A little bit surprising, given that Splyce actually haven't backed yet. They haven't restocked on their wards, but they're playing the safe game. They're just going to focus even more on vision. Buy a couple of extra items, it seems, Pyro.
Seems like ROCCAT are keen to just try and find a couple of those picks before they go for a big objective like the Baron. Especially when you consider the fact that Memento, he's now not just got the Predator boots, but he has the right to score. He's going to be wiggling real fast if he finds anybody.
Mallet now picked up for Prophet as well. That's going to make things very difficult for Odo. Things looking very good right now for ROCCAT. Even though the gold lead isn't monumental, they have a lot of control over the map. It's all about the execution around Baron. I've personally been a big advocate for ROCCAT's Baron play. During the regular season, they showed a lot of good control, a lot of restraint. They weren't ones to take big gambles. But the same can be said for Splyce. How many times have they been able to thwart teams trying to set up around that objective? As it is now Splyce pushing in down the middle lane.
All right, they're going to try to get that siege on, but the mini wave is melting pretty fast. They do get a root onto Norskeren, but he's going to get a knock-up and a lock-up suppression. Dragging him right back in. Memento finding Odoamne, but the train's leaving the station, or is it? It's going to get interrupted as Heaq picks up the finishing blow on the kill. Blanc getting low, but getting healed. And now the fight is continuing to go back and forth. Prophet gets pulled in. He's fine. He's got the big Gnar. The battle dance. Norskeren trying to go in with the grand entrance. Not going to happen, though, as the black shield was on, and Nisqy picks up kill number 6.
And a bit of a miscommunication there between Prophet and Norskeren will result in the loss of his life and an overall 1-for-1 trade. Splyce, they wanted to try and force that mid tower down. They knew that Prophet was in the bottom lane. They were the ones trying to take advantage of the side lane pressure that they have. The play itself was pretty good, but the execution, that's what was lacking. Odoamne, he overextended underneath the tower. He disrespected the ability for ROCCAT to collapse, and he ends up losing his life, and that should have been a lot worse for Splyce. But as we mentioned, slight misplay, slight communication issues there for ROCCAT does mean that it ends up being a 1-for-1 trade.
Now we're going to get to see how it unfolded once again. Kasing stepping forward, trying to find someone on that dark binding, and you know the rest.
Yeah, and this is it. See, so he wants to try and walk up, hit the tower. He shouldn't really need to. He should rely on the Caitlyn to damage the tower. Ends up getting caught back. A lot of ultis were used, which means that ROCCAT at this point can't really commit to the fight. But Prophet goes in. He's trying to threaten some of the front line, maybe ulti under the tower, and then there you go. Prophet flashes out, Norskeren flashes in, and now that 5-0-0 Kassadin becomes 6-6. 6-0-0.
He's hard to catch, too. He's got a QSS in his inventory as well as he keeps stacking that tier up, and it seems like he can just afford to do this because he's not getting any weaker. And this is the most kills that Nisqy's ever had in a game here in the LCS. He's really stepping up huge.
I mean, this Splyce never really plays around Nisqy. They never try to enable him to be a big carry, and often when Splyce fall behind, it is Nisqy that's one of the big perpetrators to why that's happening. But now he's becoming... He has to be the big carry for this game. Now he has all the kills, he has all the goals. A lot of focus is going to be on him to see how well he can transition this lead into these later fights.
And it's crazy when you consider how, when we were looking at this matchup to set things up, we thought this was going to be the weak point that ROCCAT were going to be able to attack, because comparing to Blanc, Nisqy just didn't look all that good on the stats and in how he was able to play it. It's definitely kind of turned around here. Memento is turned around as well as he gets exhausted trying to find a pick onto either Kobbe or Kasing. Splyce are hanging around though. Here comes Xerxe hopping, insta charm on the Kassadin. Is going to be able to do enough damage. Odoamne comes right in, and Nisqy deletes Heaq off the map, and they are going to be able to clean up the rest of ROCCAT. Double kill going the way of the Kassadin. Can he make it a triple? It gets stolen away by Kobbe, and guess what, Vedius? It's Baron time.
Beautiful flank from Odoamne. He hit directly onto the two carries, set up perfectly for the rest of his team to punish. They get themselves 3 kills, and Splyce, they're going to lock themselves in. The first Baron of our quarterfinals.
26 minutes, and Splyce are certainly pulling away from ROCCAT off a brilliantly executed team fight. Nice collapse all across the board. The only thing you can complain about is Kobbe picked up a kill that clearly was meant for Nisqy.
That's very, very true. 4-9 now in favor of Splyce. This is where things kicked off. Memento gets an exhaust out. from Kasing. He's then disengaging. They try and get a bit of vision control. Just keep your eyes on the minimap. Sion comes in from behind. Blanc doesn't block it off. He gets a double knock-up onto the bot lane. Prophet goes into mini Gnar, and Splyce can just continue the chase. Extremely well done there from Splyce. And good taking advantage of the fact that Odo, he had the push on bot. Prophet was forced to group up with his team. ROCCAT went to try and go for a pick. And then the moment ROCCAT tried to disengage, Odo is immediately there to get the follow-up. They get a really good team fight, and now they're the ones in control of the game.
And once again, it seemed like ROCCAT might have had the tools to stop it for a moment. Norskeren gets the charm off onto Nisqy, but there's no follow-up damage because Xerxe is right in the front of it all. So Splyce are just executing these fights incredibly well.
Extremely well. Still, they're the ones in control of the game right now. A lot of their power spikes have been hit. This is the late game that we were talking about for Splyce. They have now reached it. Level 16 Kassadin, that's the Terra Pyra. His ultimate is on like a 1.6 second cooldown right now.
Dude, he's maxed out on the Darksteel. He should just get a Medjai's at this point. It's going to be really scary. So he can also split push very effectively.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about
that.
Yeah, no, Blanc can't either. He is going to get crushed. You can see very early Banshee spell coming out from Blanc to try and mitigate some of that. But Nisqy, it's really difficult to catch him as well because they don't have enough CC with this comp. He has the QSS, he has the Rift Walk. This becomes very, very difficult right now for ROCCAT. They're just going to have to do their best to stall out the Baron, look for a pick with the Skarner. Maybe they can find a good flank off with Prophet. But right now, this is Splyce setup. Yep. Try and close out the first game.
And nowhere is the gap really right now more apparent than the items between the two mid laners. You already alluded to the Banshee's Veil. On top of it, he's got a Seraph's Embrace. But then, yeah, everything. Nisqy is not short for cash at the moment.
No, he is not. So, how are Splyce setting up the map right now? We can see they do have a push down in the bottom lane. They will have to answer that top wave, but for now, they don't need to go and deal with it. Mandrake isn't going to be spawning for a while, and they still have a minute left on the Baron. So ideally, they want to regain mid control. They want to look to invade the enemy jungle and start getting slightly deeper vision and look to either make a play towards that mid-tier 2 or play towards the bot. Given that they've sent Kassadin down there for now, you would imagine that they'll push in this mid wave and head towards the bot side, try and secure this tower with what remains of their Baron.
Still 50 seconds. Prophet is going to go to match. He's near enough on the Gnar bar, but not feeling confident that the rest of ROCCAT can hold off this Splyce push in the mid. ROCCAT's still a little slow to respond, trying to get there, but Caitlyn traps deterring them. And it's looking like Splyce are going to be able to chunk this one down pretty easily. There's not a lot of damage that ROCCAT can push out.
Prophet even scared to go 1v1 against Nisqy. He has very little magic resistance. That tower is dropping extremely quickly.
Nisqy doesn't have to do anything, he just lets the Winions take it.
Yep, the Can going to be doing a lot of work. You can see Splyce on their way through the enemy jungle. Heaq here to try and help, but Splyce, they know what they want, and they're going for it.
Okay, Xerxe hopping in, but they didn't commit to it, instead preferring the towers to Splyce. That's number 6 for them. ROCCAT have only been able to find the outers of their opposition this game. And with the Perrin buff all wrapped up now, it's closer and closer to that 30-minute mark, but ROCCAT needs some time to try and get back into this one.
You know, and this early game looked very good for ROCCAT. Yes, very early on. It ended in a little bit of disaster.
They picked it up, though.
Exactly that. That's the point that I was trying to get to. That Memento was able to find a couple of better opportunities down towards the bottom lane. ROCCAT, they were able to secure a lot of the outer towers, and they had good control over the enemy jungle. But then they were a little too afraid to force things. They had an item advantage with their AD carry, yet didn't try to gamble any fights. They played things a little too safe. They didn't want to run the risk. And then that allowed Splyce to find that one big team fight around the Baron area. That's given them so much more control over the game. And Splyce, as they've shown over the last few weeks, once they get ahead, it is very difficult to get it back from them.
Yeah, they are able to snowball things. Maybe not always in the early game, but generally speaking, they can just run away with those leads. It's going to be hard to break through the front line if ROCCAT want to try and take a fight. That's 2 Warmog's armors on Odoamne and Xerxe. But everybody's been executing well, and who'd have thought we'd be talking about Nisqy being the biggest factor in this game 1 of Splyce?
Yeah. It's quite fascinating because when you look at Nisqy as an individual, he actually gets a decent amount of the gold on Splyce, yet he doesn't really do very much with it. He's not very efficient with the resources invested into him, but I feel like this game will pad his stats out a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
8-0 and 1.
Look at post-split stats only, and Nisqy is looking like a guy.
But even then, like on a Kassadin, you don't actually do that much damage. You kind of jump in, you hit someone, and then dash out again. It's like short essence of burst. So maybe he will still be affected. Regardless, his impact is clearly very visible, given that no one can really rival him down in the bottom lane. Splyce now just using him to buy a little bit more time, keep pressure towards the bottom side of the map, as we imagine Splyce looking towards the top side as Baron will be spawning about a minute and a half.
I think it's important to note, though, for ROCCAT that despite the fact they're getting pushed deeper and deeper into their own territory, they've maintained this vision control. A lot of it is going away now because Splyce can march in and just take it. But ROCCAT continue to keep these wards down to keep eyes on what Splyce is doing so they don't have to walk in blind.
Vision is important, and we knew it would be important coming into this game. ROCCAT utilized it effectively, or mostly effectively, to counter gank against Xerxe. Unfortunately, it was them that ended up getting picked off a lot. And I feel like a lot of this game has been execution errors for ROCCAT. Didn't play entirely well to their win conditions very early on. Memento maybe should have spent a little bit more time towards the bot side rather than even considering going top. But that's the advantage of best of 5 Pyra. There is an opportunity to adapt. Things aren't entirely over yet for ROCCAT. They still have the ability to steal away the Baron, maybe get a good fight, but it's difficult because the scaling is on Splyce's side. They're known as a very good team-fighting team. It's an 8-0-1 Kassadin that's basically full build.
Caitlyn's got the 4 items now. I mean, yeah, everything's really coming together for Splyce.
Exactly.
This is going to be hard to bring back. Not impossible, but pretty difficult.
Yes, it certainly will be. So, the Splyce, the veteran roster, going up against the young rookie talent that is ROCCAT. Very little playoff experience. We'll have to see how ROCCAT can adapt. They are guaranteed at least 2 more games, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, let's not write it before it's all over. Well, looks like the Baron due to come up in a couple of seconds. Let's see how fast Splyce want to try and make a play for it, or if they just actually look to bait out ROCCAT. This is the experience coming through. Oh, Kasing sends one Dark Binding, goes a little bit wide. EQ popping the Featherstorm, and in goes Norskeren on the combo. Can they get the deletion? It's Xerxe that goes down, but that's the tank. That's not who they want, and it's going to be an answer back on the Skarner. Now the Pain Train's coming in, the double kill for Nisqy, and Splyce turn it right around after ROCCAT spent everything they had in the tank. Kobbe guns down Blanc, and even Prophet can't get away as easily. Gets pulled back in by the goo. The decimating smash into Gnar form. Kobbe getting a double kill as he picks off the final member, and that is everyone gone. Ace at 33.5.
5-0, Splyce take everything from ROCCAT. They're not going to need the Baron, they simply want the base as they look to secure the first game in this quarterfinal.
All they needed was the fight, not the objectives. Now, they don't have any minions right now, so they're actually going to walk away because they can't
might have
quite
to go
end
for Baron, Pyra. Yeah, they don't have
right.
the minions. They can't look to quite end things just yet. Our calls were a little premature.
Man, that was going to be such a cool ending, too.
Yeah, we set up perfectly.
Vedius, you are unlucky.
Unlucky. Well, looks like Splyce won't be as they secure themselves a Baron.
Yeah, no contest possible here. I don't care how fast Memento is. He's not going to be able to get to the 5th time for
exactly
steal away.
that. Inhibitor did go down as well in favor of Splyce. Good team fight, but when we bring the replay up, I want everyone to keep their eyes on Memento. He will be the focal reason as to why Splyce were able to get such a convincing win. Keep your eyes on the jungler. Watch as he flashes in. Fails to get the ulti onto Kobbe, eats a binding, gets locked up, and with him gone, with no engage, no target for the rest of ROCCAT to follow on, it is very easy for Splyce to re-engage. This is what we talked a lot about this game with regards to ROCCAT and some of the execution errors, and unfortunately that was a big one in one of the late game fights that secured a 5-0 for Splyce.
Right, I mean, you need to be almost flawless when you're this far behind to be able to try and pull a fight back, but that just kind of goes to show you some of that difference in experience. Memento, he said over and over that he wants to be the leader of this ROCCAT team. He's the one who's calling the shots for them, trying to set them up to make plays, and that is the big win condition for him to enable them in the early game, in the mid game, in the late game. And it feels like it's getting increasingly desperate here.
And well, they kind of have to be there. 11,000 gold down.
Yes, that's a big number. That's not a lot of gold to work with.
So 3 members grouped up, full Splyce around the middle lane. That will naturally push in. You can see a wave being built up in the bot. Top is kind of even right now. All right, Norskeren. They do have the Baron back. Elder Dragon spawns in a minute 30. I wonder if Splyce will wait. I mean, I'm sure they want to try and secure that mid, or sorry, the bot tier 3 rather. They'll just keep walking the super minions in the middle lane. I think they can just dive this. I don't think they really have to be afraid of very much, given how much stronger they are than ROCCAT right now.
Splyce, number ones to overextend in this game for sure. Knocking down the tower should be easy peasy. And just let the minions take care of the rest of it, and that's it. Doors open. Let's see. Prophet goes Gnar, but he's not able to find any damage. Nisqy trying to get a pick off onto Norskeren. Not going to happen as he dances away, but Xerxe is going in, looking for a pullback. Not going to happen there, and the inhibitor's still going to fall All the same, ROCCAT running out of options, running out of time. They've got a tank. They've impaled Odoamne, but can they take him down? Can they turn the fight? Ace in the hole coming in onto Norskeren. He's going to have to go back to Fountain. The zombie Odoamne comes back in, but with super minions marching towards, with Baron-empowered minions marching in. Splyce might want to just try to end this, even in a 4v5 situation. They're going to knock down one. Here goes Norskeren, and he gets the charm up, but he can't find the Kassadin. Nisqy hopping forward. That's a lot of damage, but not enough to get the execution. They're going to have one final chance to get back into this base, but the Nexus is bare right now. ROCCAT can't do anything as it just falls down, and off the back of some brilliant team fighting. Splyce put away game one.
Heaq just... Heaq was wiped off the map.
Oh yeah, he got deleted.
Like, I think that was a 2-shot from Nisqy. Oh man, he was so fed in that game.
Yeah, he was big. Again, I am just so surprised that we saw in game one such a massive Nisqy performance. And he just played it well too. It wasn't just, you know, get a lucky couple of kills. He turned up the heat.
Yeah, he had a big impact that game. He picked up a lot of kills. He did in fact have the highest damage dealt. Kind of what you'd expect when someone.
And he built a Mercurial Scimitar too. That's style points.
12-0-2 is his final score. Well played from him, but overall well played from Splyce. Loved the Odoamne engage in the middle of the game, getting a great flank off, allowing Splyce to get such a convincing teamfight win. For ROCCAT, they had a lot of things going for them. Once they found the first early tower in the bottom lane, they moved around the map very nicely. They punished a lot of the Xerxe engages. But their execution, their playing towards their win conditions is just what faltered a little bit.
Right.
They will have more opportunities now. As we said, they're guaranteed 3 games. This is a best of 5. You have to have first of 3 will be able to secure a spot.
I'm glad you can do the maths. I don't touch maths on broadcast.
But the thing is for ROCCAT, you know, we saw a lot of good things, but this is kind of why so many analysts were expecting Splyce to be the favorites in that both these teams do a lot of very similar things. They have good control around vision. They team fight both very well. But when it comes to the execution, Splyce often have the edge. So hopefully ROCCAT will be able to shore that up coming into game 2.
Yeah, we'll see. We haven't seen these guys do best of 5, so now we get to see what kind of stuff they're made of. Now, for more insight on game number 1, let's head over to Shocks and Friends at the analyst desk.
And Cole.
Thank you very much. What, are you implying he's not a friend of ours?
I want to be funny.
Well, he was right in the beginning of the day. Vedius just said it, but at the beginning of the day you said, Cold, well, to me, Splyce and ROCCAT, they're very similar teams, but Splyce does everything a bit better than ROCCAT does it. And that seemed to be, to me, a bit of the gist of the game, but let's take it from the start. Picks and bans-wise, we talked about keys to victory from ROCCAT. So what strategy did they go with this draft?
So initially, they actually went with the kind of strategy that I would like to see. The stronger early game jungler, using it into the bottom side of the map where they can play for the first tower, get drakes, and kind of snowball from this. But what happened was that they actually managed to make a lot of mistakes in between that gave Kassadin a lot of kills. And when Kassadin gets a lot of kills, it's not as fun to play League of Legends.
I think we also saw in this draft that Splyce kind of predicted it. They knew giving over to Xayah meant at least they would have some sort of picks they could use in lane against it. So the Caitlyn Morgana is a fine answer. Obviously, if you then end up getting attacked by a jungler and a mid laner, it gets hard. And that's why the Taliyah pick actually made a lot of sense for ROCCAT specifically to say, okay, now we have a mid lane champion who can actually fully snowball the 2 side lanes in this case.
Unfortunately, the snowball went the other way, Splyce's way, and it wasn't from lack of trying from Memento. Actually, it was because of his trying.
Tried too much.
We said he was the key to a lot of what ROCCAT could do in this matchup, but unfortunately, the timing just was a bit off.
Yeah, so basically here we see Memento getting picked off. But what is more important than this specific clip is what happened before this in the mid lane, where both Memento's flash was forced, but also both sums from Taliyah was forced. And this kind of snowballed into Splyce being able to punish.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight, I think Memento going top there was the wrong call. They even kind of called off the play before it even happened. There was a Sion sitting there with passive, plus they didn't know where Xerxe would be. They probably had quite an idea that he was going to be topside to potentially defend this dive. So they called it off. And it actually meant they couldn't make this play on the bottom side earlier. Taliyah had level 6. Kassadin had no TP at that point. They could have tried to execute this exact play we saw where he died the second time, but they waited until double TP was available, and suddenly 5 members of Splyce read the situation. They TP'd down, they killed Memento again, and while they actually did succeed in getting early turrets down, as you see on your screen right here with Nisqy, He's Kassadin. He got 5 early kills. It doesn't matter how well you play around towers. That Kassadin will forever be a problem.
Well, a funny note that I saw on the LoL eSports stats Twitter said, well, Nisqy had 5 games by the 15-minute mark. He didn't even have a single more than 5 kills game in the entire regular season. So at that point, you think, as ROCCAT, it looks pretty bad. They managed to hold their own, though, pretty good, but you knew that they were playing against a timer. You know that Kassadin is just going to completely run over you in the mid-game.
And I mean, it's pretty good for Splyce, to be honest, that we see Nisqy pop off like this, because in the preview, we were talking about that the bot lane could step up. We saw that top lane stepping up, but now we see Nisqy actually stepping into a carry role, and I think this should make the matchup even harder for ROCCAT if the trend continues.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just a little bit sad because they actually had a decent tower lead. They got Rift held as well. They did a lot of things correct, as you said, in terms of getting down objectives. There was still only 1k gold ahead at 20 minutes. And Kassadin had like 2.5 items and a QSS on the way like a minute later. So they were on a timer. That timer suddenly was impossible for them to beat because this Kassadin was fed free kills, a champion who normally never gets early kills. So it just made it almost impossible.
Yeah, when he does get those kills, he is something to fear. Let's take a look at the replay, a very painful one from the side of ROCCAT. It is where Kassadin can really show his might, and it's what locks up the game for Splyce.
Also, I like the engage.
Yeah.
Xerxe into Odoamne already calling. He's coming from the bottom side, and then, of course, the fed Kassadin one-shots whatever target he jumps. And the moment they lose this fight, it was completely over.
And it's pretty much just a dream for the Kassadin that he has 2 heavy tanks that can just force the fight whenever. And he can kind of wait until cooldowns are used, and then he can jump in. And then we just see what Kassadin can do. And I think at this point, it just becomes very hard for ROCCAT to actually win the game.
It is, and I do want to echo what you just said, Cold, about Nisqy being the only person we had question marks about for him. For him, this must be a tremendous boost to his confidence, knowing that he could do this in game 1. It can be worse game 2, right? Other members on Splyce can step up, but his confidence should hopefully make Splyce's chances even bigger, and unfortunately for ROCCAT, make it even harder.
Yeah, and also in a best of 5 already, when you pull out things like Kassadin early, you show it against the Taliyah. The team like ROCCAT will have to think about that for the next draft. I think they're going to, on ROCCAT side, actually have to look at the game 2 and decide, okay, do we want to go for the bot lane snowball again, which worked okay, and it was taking him more on the jungle.
It was fine. Like, they were actually doing the right moves in terms of getting the towers rotating into mid, getting the mid tower against the Kassadin, which you should always look to do. So they were doing the right steps, but I felt like they were doing it too slow because of the mistakes they're doing. And that
set them behind.
Yeah, and it set them behind in time, where they should be maybe 3 or 4k gold ahead. They were only like 1k gold ahead.
So basically, at the end, you'd want to see the same strategy is still viable for you guys, for ROCCAT to focus on that bottom lane, and hopefully the jitters from game 1 and what they've seen should put that timing.
That's like the super exciting part about a best of 5, because you have the opportunity to try what failed if you think you can redo it and do it better. So it's all on ROCCAT. I think what they showed in the first game was that they were just not executing 100% correctly, and I think they can actually do it if they play it one more time. So I would love to see them do it again.
I think they might have to remove some other champions, though. I feel like the Vladimir ban in Phase 2 and the Olaf ban didn't really do much against Splyce, because in Splyce's case, the fact they get to draft a Zac for Xerxe, which is his best pick by far, and then they also get a tank top for Odoamne to where he can actually play engage. It just meant that like this death ball comp, where the moment they get to actually go as 5, they can just hard engage every single time.
Worth banning out the Zac?
I think in the second phase, instead of banning all of Vladimir, you could just definitely have banned the Zac.
It was like Xerxe's really good, but he's especially good on Zac, as are most junglers. So.
Yeah, and it's not saying that they couldn't have beaten it, because it made sense what they were trying to do in putting him on a slower jungler.
Also, just Olaf as a pick is a power pick in almost any region at the moment, but I don't think we have seen Xerxe play it. So in series like this, you can actually try to test players. Like, are you comfortable playing this champion? It's a very demanding champions in terms of that you cannot really do mistakes as a Olaf, else you will just be useless in the game. So I wanna see them try more. In the
we want to see ROCCAT try more. It was gonna be rough for them, and it just got rougher. They need to come up with some answers, because there's a ticket to Copenhagen on the line in this series, with the AD carry star Kobbe looking to get a shot on stage at the Royal Arena from the side of Splyce. But before we go to break, let's hear from another famous Dane about what it means to play in your home country.
Man ser altid folk, der fra deres eget hjemland spiller finalerne. De sådan som Xerxe i Frankrig, hvor folk gælder ikke Xerxe, og han har den der kappe med flaget på, og det er mega fedt og alt det der. Så jeg tænker altid på, at det vil jeg gerne have. Jeg ved, at Østrig og mig havde de danske flag rundt om sådan kappen, og så kunne gå ind på stage, og folk ville hætte på mig og på os. Det var mega fedt, men det sker ikke.